Good morning. Good morning on this May morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Erie's online Sunday service. Today's service is Breathe. I am the Reverend Kristina Church, and it's my pleasure and privilege to serve this wonderful community as its minister. And I'm so glad that you're here with us, whether you're here for the first time, whether you've been here many times. We are so grateful to join together this morning in this virtual sanctuary that we all create with our presence. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We like to begin our services by the ringing of a bell to call the faithful into the sanctuary. And during this time of distancing, we do it as a group. So if you have a bell or something to make a joyful noise, please unmute yourself now and ring it with gusto. With gusto. Wonderful.
Reverend Kristina, I'm afraid you're muted.
Thank you, Diane. So my dog Onyx is also continuing the joyful noise by drinking with gusto from his water bowl this morning. So if you're hearing that in the background, that's just another wonderful way of welcoming you to this time of mindfulness and sharing. And we also like to start our services with Hal Walker's welcoming song. We have a different person from the congregation singing these words of welcome each week. And this week, it will be performed by Ginny Sable. So Ginny.
Sable. Good morning. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whomever you love. We welcome you.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. Our opening words this morning are by Black intellectual and writer Imani Perry, who writes, "I want to live in a world in which we have a kind of deep witnessing for the least of these, and the space for the kind of care and love for the least of these, not out of charity, but out of an understanding that's at the core of what it means to be fully human and to aspire to the beloved community." And now we'll have a prelude from Jackson. It's a traditional Hawaiian piece, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but I know that it will be beautiful.
That's Ka Ililau Kekoa. Mahe mahe vale ke kino o kapalani. Upe ikalua lihi lihi kili kili hune. Aheve e io no ka uka o kanahele. E moani ke ala e lave i mahu ihu I koni koni he. Koni he. Kahi uhe uhe uhene e kahili lau ke koa au he aoe e kihana Ave Mahu Ikoni Koni Hey Koni Hey Kahi Uhe Uhe Uhene Uhe Uhene Hey Kahili Lao Kekoa Ao He Aoi Hey Pihana O Kalani Hey Kahili Lao Kekoa Umoe Pahao Kami He Kami Uhe Kahili Lao Kekoa Au He Aoi E Pihana O Kalani E Kahili Lao Kekoa Umoe Pahao
Thank you, Jackson. And can you give us any context about that piece? What some of the words mean in English or the theme of it?
Well, I don't know all the words, but the theme is basically they're speaking about the land as though it were a beautiful person, and that how much they respect and love the land. And there's a couple words I can't remember. One of them is waterfall. I know that O Kalani is heaven, so they're also comparing it to heaven. And a lot of converts went over there during the 1800s, so there's a lot of Hawaiians converted to Christianity. So that there's a lot of that in there too. So that's that.
Thank you. It's beautiful. The symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith is the flaming chalice. And each Sunday we light a chalice to symbolize our being together and our hearts being warmed and united in this special place. If you have a candle or a chalice and you would like to light one, I invite you to do so. This month is the beginning of Asian American Heritage Month, where we celebrate the heritage of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders here in the United States. So I thought it would be appropriate to read this chalice lighting that's provided by the Unitarian Universalist. It's an international organization that shares these chalice lightings each month. And this particular one is from the Philippines. And this is the English translation. It's by Armand Pedro. We light this chalice for us to be reminded that despite our imperfections, we are still blessed in so many different ways. May our hearts and minds always value the beauty in each one of us, knowing that each of us carries that little spark within us. And if we collectively share our little spark, we can create a bigger light to illumine our bruised and broken world. May it be so. All right. Chalice is lit. And to continue our centering and our joining together, we have two universal agreements, two covenants that we like to recite. The first is known as the Universal Covenant, and it is shared by Unitarian Universalists in many different congregations. Would anyone like to lead the congregation in the Universal Covenant today, along with the hand motions?
Sure.
Hi, Mike. Great.
Hi. We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands. We care for the earth and each other.
Thank you. We also have an agreement or a covenant that is specific to this congregation. It's known as the 1898 Bond of Union. It has been in continuous use since then, and I will say the words. You're welcome to say them with me. The words will also appear on your screen. We unite ourselves together for the study and practice of morality and religion, as interpreted by the growing thought and noblest lives of humanity, believing that we may thereby prove helpful one to another and promote the cause of truth, righteousness, and love in the world.
You're muted, Reverend Kristina.
Thank you. I'm having a little trouble with my mute button this morning. Thanks. So in our Time for All Ages part of our service, we like to share a story or an activity that relates to the theme of the service. That's for everyone, for all ages of the congregation. And I want to share a story today that's, it's a modernized version of a traditional wisdom story called Sister Goose. And we're going to be talking about injustice today, and some of the ways that we can change the world or try. And so this particular story, I want you to listen for ways that the system is lined up against Sister Goose. So it's hard for her to get justice because she is she's literally swimming through a system that that is not designed to give her a just treatment. So this is Sister Goose. Sister Goose swam in the pond. She was happy as could be. Now and then she'd duck her head down to nibble on a little bit here or there, nibble a little bit over there. And she took no more than her fill of those succulent underwater plants because she knew that the pool belonged to everybody. Now, meanwhile, Brother Fox was hiding in the willows at the very far end of the pond. Now, he didn't like to see anyone happy, least of all a goose. So Sister Goose was swimming along and enjoying the clear blue sky and the bright sunshine. And she swam along to the willows that were growing at the far end of the pond. And all of a sudden, Brother Fox sprang right out of those willows and shouted, "Trespasser, you get off of my lake." Well, Sister Goose shrugged her wings and she looked up at Brother Fox and said, "Trespasser? How so? This lake doesn't belong to you. It belongs to all of us." But Brother Fox didn't seem to hear that. He just kept on shouting, "You've been eating some of the plants in this pond. They don't belong to you. If you don't get out of this lake, I'm going to take you to court." Well, Sister Goose was pretty scared when he said that, but she said to herself, "Just breathe. Breathe in. Breathe out. Now I know I haven't done anything wrong." But she could see by the ugly gleam in Brother Fox's eyes that she wasn't going to be able to convince him of that. So she took another deep breath and she centered herself and she said, "All right, I'm not afraid to go to court over this because I know my rights. and at least their justice can be served. And so they went to court. But you know what happened? When Sister Goose arrived at the courthouse, she was very surprised and scared to see that the clerks who sat just inside the doors, they were both foxes. And inside the courtroom, she saw that all the lawyers were foxes. And the judge was a fox too. And even the jurors, even the people that were going to be deciding about her guilt or her innocence, some of them had red fur and some of them had brown fur and some of them had silver fur, but they were all foxes too. Sister Goose was quaking when she entered the defendant's booth, but she said to herself, take a breath in and take a breath out. I know I haven't done anything wrong. But though her arguments were very sound, the judge and the jury still found her guilty. They convicted her and they sent her off to a terrible punishment. And sometimes that's how it goes. Sometimes there isn't much justice for the likes of a goose when all the folks in the courthouse and all the folks in the justice making system are all foxes. The end. Now, that's actually a great segue to our next segment of the service. Our social responsibility and social justice team has decided that we would like you to know more about all the wonderful things that we are doing. And so we're going to be talking to you a little bit each week for a while. And we're starting in May with a very important justice issue, which is criminal justice. And that means, you know, everything from policing all the way to our carceral systems, our prison systems. So we thought it would be wonderful to have Jim Wise, one of our congregants who has been doing absolutely essential work in the prison system for a very long time and is very passionate about it. We thought it would be great to have him start off this new part of our service and tell you about his work. So Jim, if you can unmute yourself and let us know a little bit about what you do.
There. Do you hear me now? All right. In 1783, a group of prominent Philadelphia citizens led by Benjamin Franklin and Benjamin Rush organized a movement which they called the Philadelphia Prison Society. During the next 4 years until 1787, it remained thus, but then became the Pennsylvania Prison Society, which it still is today. It has worked to ensure humane prison and jail conditions and advocate for sensible criminal justice policies. In the age of mass incarceration, this mission is more relevant than ever. This society is the oldest in the country dedicated to sensible and humane criminal justice. Today, the society advocates for systemic policy change, responds to the concerns of inmates and their families, provides subsidized bus service for Philadelphia families visiting loved ones incarcerated in different parts of the state, and provides assistance to individuals returning home from incarceration. The cornerstone of the policies of the society's work is a network of volunteers known as official visitors, who visit prisoners throughout Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania law authorizes the Prison Society to designate volunteers to visit any jail or prison in the Commonwealth. Prison Society volunteers are known as official visitors, have authority to privately interview any inmate in any prison or jail for any reason. Official visitors visit with inmates throughout the Commonwealth, often becoming the inmate's only contact with someone outside of the facility. Many that I have visited, that is true for. The Society receives approximately 200 requests a month for volunteer visits. Requests come from family members, friends, and inmates themselves. Approximately half of the requests are for assistance with medical care. But in addition to visiting inmates, our volunteers support inmates being released who are reestablishing themselves in the community, provide social programming in prisons and jails, and inspect facilities. The Society is the sole organization in the Commonwealth with this authority. It is also the only nonprofit organization in the United States with this degree of access to jails and prisons. The protocol I follow when doing an official visit is to take down every word the inmate tells me. Then I read it back to make sure that it is accurate. Then I ask the inmate which, if any of the things that we discussed, he would want me to approach the institution's management, usually through the assistant superintendent, about. And do they want me to contact the person who made the OV request? Then I file my report with the Prison Society, and then I write to the assistant superintendent when appropriate, and I call the official visit requester. 2 weeks ago, I wrote the assistant superintendent to say that in my 15 years of doing this, she has always responded with an investigation into the inmate's alleged facts, which have resulted in every case in a denial of any wrongdoing by the institution's personnel. And I find this to be utterly, I'm sorry, I'm full of my own notes here. And I find the utter inconsistencies of these investigations to be troubling. The utter consistency is what I mean. Every time my inmate is gone, is every inmate fabricating these allegations, or is the member of the institutional staff lying about their involvement? Within a week of my having written that, the New York Times reported on April 24th about an investigation that they conducted, which showed that the New York prison employees routinely falsify their reports. The previous coordinator for official visits at Albion was struck by COVID in February of 2020. So I became the unwilling coordinator for the official visit program at Albion. And also, the other person that could have done the visits was not able to do them. So I have, for the last year, conducted every Albion visit. Well, no, there have been two that I got farmed out. So my hope in making this talk this morning was to try to get others in our congregation involved here in order to try to get a little respite from doing all of the visiting. But then at the last moment, the woman who had COVID is recovering enough to come back, and the other person that can do them, her job has lightened up a little, or actually she's retiring, and so she can also make these visits. But even still, If anyone out there would like to become either just a member of the Prison Society, because we do have in our group people who are members that are not official visitors, or if you would like to become an official visitor, I would love to help you to do that. That's it. Do I mute myself now, or what do I do?
Sure. Thank you, Jim, so much for your passion and for your hard work and for taking on even extra stuff during this pandemic. And what you do matters so much. And I hope there are people out there who would have a passion for this work because it's really, really needed. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now is the time in the service when we make a practice of generosity by sharing what we have with this congregation, with one another, and for the work that the congregation does outside its walls. You can make your check payable to UUCE. You can mail it to the address that you see on your screen, or you can also go to the website uuerie.org/donate. And always, if the payment is towards your pledge, please note that and let us know. While we are focusing on generosity, we will hear Jackson perform There Is More Love Somewhere.
I'm just gonna do a quick test. Am I okay on volume, you guys? Give me a heads up. Am I too loud or anything? Okay. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more love somewhere.
Thank you, Jackson. You know, in preparation for this service this morning, I read Imani Perry's book entitled Simply Breathe. It is published by our publishing arm of the Unitarian Universalist Association, Beacon Press. And it is also the UU Common Read for 2021, meaning that Unitarians, Unitarian Universalists all over the country are reading it within their congregations and discussing the ideas held in this book. The book is a letter to Perry's two Black sons, Freeman Diallo and Issa Garner. And it's also a meditation on what it means to be a Black woman, a Black professor, a Black mother in the United States in these times. Now, I was just sure that with a title like that, there would be some great quote about breathing in it somewhere. And that would be something that I would mine for this service. And I made it through the whole book, which isn't really a very long book and is a fabulously lyrically emotive and evocative read, and also quite painful in places. I got through the whole book and then I said, wait a minute, where's the part about breathing? You see, I wanted to write about justice work today as a part of a cycle of breath, a part of a cycle where we take an in-breath by learning about issues and learning about things, reading books and taking in information, and then an out-breath where we act for justice in the world. I wanted to write about how white identified UUs can sometimes get stuck in that cycle somewhere, mistaking the intake piece for the whole cycle. How we sometimes may get lost in ideas about individuality, thinking that if we do a lot of improvement on ourselves, that we are somehow making the world better just by gaining that knowledge. And how we miss the fact that our actions have failed to make the world a safer or better or more livable or less lethal place for a single person of color. So I wanted to talk about breathing, and I wanted to talk about Imani Perry's book, but it turns out that I was the one who missed the mark because I read the whole book without really understanding. Now, most of us would agree that our faith is a full week faith. It's not just for Sunday mornings, right? About how we Unitarian Universalists don't just pray with our lips, how at our best, and when we're really engaged, we pray with our hands, we pray with our feet, with our whole bodies, with our breath. Now, many of us are privileged enough to take for granted that the next breath will indeed come, and then the next one, and then the next one. Now, I often miss those moments that life presents where I ought to act with justice. So I am not sharing any of this with you as someone who has it all figured out, or someone who knows just exactly what to do when I hear words of injustice in my daily life, or who knows exactly how to apply all my learnings and be a good anti-racist ally. Because I often miss the moment. I often discover that I needed to prepare myself, be ready to speak my truth, and then I do not. You see, I was not raised to be comfortable in speaking truth to power. I was not raised to speak up in situations that will make it uncomfortable for me. And I often fail to meet the challenges of those moments. But I hope that I'm getting better. And I hope that I am not failing to absorb the lessons of our times. Because at this particular moment, in the wake of many senseless and brutal and illegal killings of Black people and people of color, but in the wake of the trial over the senseless killing of George Floyd, we are now experiencing a time of chaos and of growing awareness by people who look like me, white people, of the truths that people of color have been expressing to us for centuries. For example, scholar and writer Ibram Kendi calls this moment an inflection point, a place and a time where there's an opportunity to make a true change in our society by addressing and dismantling systems of oppression. So this time of ours when denial is being pulled away, that gauzy veil of denial, and we are collectively encountering a new reality on a new level. We see a time where, in the words of Reverend Dr. King, we are met with the fierce urgency of now. History will look back and judge our responses to this time. What are UU's called to do in a time like this? Well, if we're truly practicing a faith worthy of that name, we must be able to receive guidance from our sources of truth during these times of crisis. And as a non-creedal faith with a wide variety of sources, that's a tough one for us. But we do covenant to uphold and affirm 7 principles that we can and must agree on. And we also have some informal phrases that echo down through the generations. Phrases like deeds, not creeds. And we seek to create heaven on earth. So maybe rather than memorizing a creed, we should ask ourselves, what deeds have I performed today, this year, that reflected my deeply held beliefs? What have I done to create heaven on earth? What does my life speak about the things that I revere? You see, our beloved 7 principles must be more than just a set of beautiful words that we congratulate ourselves with on Sunday mornings, or Saturday mornings, or any other day of the week. Our faith must be a template for faithful living, not just a refuge from the stressors of the world, although it sometimes can be that also. And so if we're truly practitioners of Unitarian Universalism, we must ask ourselves, is the goal of peace, liberty, and justice for all one that I've worked for in my life? Or are there places in my life where I am praying a reverent prayer of comfort, safety, and security for some? And when I talk about the worth and dignity of every person, am I willing to make that an enacted reality in our congregation, in our community, in our country? Or am I using these words to smooth out inequities and cover over injustices, such as in the phrase, all lives matter? For if I really believe in the worth and dignity of every single person born into this world, will not that deeply held, faithful belief compel me to action in solidarity with my siblings who experience oppression and hatred every single day in the United States of America? So I want to talk to you about another hindrance to being able to take action in the fierce urgency of this moment. And it's a big one for our faith. You see, there's nothing we love to do more than form committees, read books, study the problem. And I get caught up in this as much as anybody else. Because I love to read books. I love to be in discussion groups. I love to try and understand things from an intellectual perspective. And in and of itself, there's no problem with that curiosity about the world and that desire to learn more about something. But the problem comes when we stop there. The problem comes when we pat ourselves on the back and say, now, hey, I've read 5 whole books on white supremacy, and that makes me a great ally. I post anti-racist memes on my Facebook page all the time, and I think it's making a real difference on my Facebook page. We're still not able to speak up when we hear racist comments at the grocery store or the coffee shop or the company picnic. We're still not showing up with our bodies and our time and our resources in solidarity with folks of color at community activities and Black-owned businesses and Black-led movements for change. We're still not making enough changes in our congregational and denominational lives, changes that have been recommended, requested, and demanded by UUs of color for decades now. We may still not be ready to embrace, adopt, and enact the 8th principle, expressing the need to dismantle systems of white supremacy culture and work for spiritual wholeness to create beloved community. Now, if this is where we're at, and I admit to getting stuck in some of these places some of the time, we need to remember that after an in-breath needs to come an out-breath. After intellectual learning and taking in, we then need to act ourselves into new ways of being. This embodied, enacted knowledge, this way of doing, of being, not just intellectual learning, this prayer that happens from the hands, from the heart, from the voice, and from the feet, this gets oxygen where it needs to go, into our lungs, our blood, our bones, and then it fuels greater connection and understanding out in the world, which then moves us to act with even fiercer commitment for justice in the places we show up. See, it's this activity of learning and then doing that's the life breath of compassion that fuels that heart for justice. So if our justice-making hearts aren't getting the oxygen they need to pump that lifeblood of compassion through our lives, we need to take a look at the balance between learning and doing, breathing in and breathing out. We need to know when to push ourselves, when to push for changes in our world. And we also need to know when to rest. For being in the struggle long term requires rest and renewal. We also need to let go of perfection, that paralyzing need for perfection that is one of the very aspects of that sclerotic white supremacy culture that keeps us stuck and afraid we'll say the wrong thing, afraid we don't know the right thing to do. When we harm one another, and in our human imperfections, we always will, we need to commit to accepting the feedback of others about how we might have negatively impacted them with our words or with our deeds. We need to accept that feedback with grace and humility and repair the harm. We need to listen to people when they describe their experiences. We need to listen to our siblings of color who tell us about how the world is not a just place for them. And we need to believe that they are the ones with the expertise on racism, not people who've moved through the world with invisible privilege, people who look like me. Now, all of us, especially those who identify as white, need to get comfortable with the act of making people uncomfortable as a necessary part of changing the status quo. So if your identity includes a lot of privilege, then I would encourage you to become comfortable with being uncomfortable yourself and also with saying things that might make people uncomfortable. If you experience a lot of oppression in your life, if you have identities that bring you to a marginalized place, then I would encourage you to take good care of yourself. Rest. Get the rest that you need to renew your spirit. Now, I am getting better at saying things that make people uncomfortable sometimes, but I have a long way to go. And one of the tricks that I've discovered for having courage during those truth-telling moments is picturing my entire faith movement gathered around me and behind me, giving me courage. Yeah, I picture all of you. I picture my colleagues. I picture my friends as a cloud of witnesses there, giving me strength. I picture our ancestors, our abolitionist ancestors, our ancestors who marched for civil rights in Selma and other places. While we haven't always stood behind our truth tellers, at our best moments, Unitarian Universalists have found the courage to put our lives and our livelihoods in the service of justice, and that shores me up. But as I said, as a white identified person, I have a long way to go in this work. And we, as a movement, have a long way to go. But I think we are finally starting to focus on a vision of beloved community. I really hope so. Sometimes I see it shimmering there in the distance, just out of reach. And I know that we can all reach that beautiful place of human thriving, of human blossoming, if we're willing to work for it. If we are to be a force for the change we all need to see in the world, we need to be willing to speak truth when it matters. And that means outside of our own echo chambers, our own bubble of like-mindedness. We need to ask ourselves every single day what we're doing to make those beautiful words of our 7 principles, and hopefully soon our 8 principles, to make those the reality on every street corner in America. We need to commit our bodies and our resources and our time to dismantling systems of oppression and building new systems of peace, liberty, and justice for all. How do we do this? By breathing in, centering ourselves, grounding ourselves in our faith, in our knowing, in our understanding. And then we breathe out and we act for justice and truth. As we do the work, we learn to do the work better. And the breathing cycle begins to come more easily, more fluidly, and more deeply. It took me several days, I'm ashamed to say. It took me several days to understand why Imani Perry's book was entitled Breathe. And now, as I see it, and this is only my interpretation, her title is both a reminder to herself to breathe, to love, to find joy and spaciousness amidst all the danger and fear for her sons. To delight in her beautiful Black sons and their gorgeous young lives, not to allow that fear of what will happen to them to take away the breath of life, the joy and the presence of this moment. And her title is also a prayer for her sons, that they can continue to live and breathe, that their lives not be taken away from them for breathing, shopping, driving, singing to music, playing in a park, knocking on a door, walking through a neighborhood, barbecuing in their own backyard while Black. Until all Black mothers' sons can breathe free. None of us are free to waste the gift of life and breath in privileged bodies, in bodies that can do something to create a better world. So let's vow to use the precious oxygen we have to speak, to move, and to act for justice. Now I invite us to share joys and concerns with the congregation. This is a time to share what's on your heart with a phrase, a word, an emotion in the chat box. And we will be listening to Jackson play one of our hymns, the meditation on breathing. So please remember to breathe and share with this beloved community what is uppermost for you at this moment.
Okay, I think is my sound better? Can you guys hear me? Does anybody hear me? Okay.
It's a little kind of staticky or fuzzy or something.
It sounds like it's overdriven. It sounds like you're too close to the microphone.
Distorted, too loud still.
Okay, thanks. Hey, these are troubled times right now, you guys. Can you, is that better? Okay. All right. I'm almost giving up. Like, what am I gonna do? Let's see, I'm gonna change the song to something about the static. Just kidding. So. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love.
I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe out peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Did you send it?
I don't know, I thought I
You
did.
sent it over here.
I did.
Thanks to everyone who shared what's on your hearts. I saw in the chat messages of appreciation for the music and for the themes of the service. Also frustration with how to address those who spew out hate and intolerance in our world. I saw some folks who shared that they feel the need to center themselves and breathe, so that was a good reminder. Many appreciations of Jim's message and appreciation for what he has been doing in the prison system and gratitude for his important work. For all these that were shared, also noting that it is Mental Health Awareness Month this month, so thank you, Aubrey, for sharing that. It's also just a day after the pagan holiday of Beltane, or as you may know it, May Day, and also International Workers' Day. So lots and lots to celebrate and be mindful of this month. Thank you to all who shared. We are with you. Our closing words today are from the Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, inspired by their words and with some additions by Reverend Kristina. Angel says, many of us don't feel permission, but you have to disrupt business as usual in your own life, and you have to disrupt business as usual in all of the spaces that you're in. So if you don't do anything else today, leave here anointed as a disruptor and really allow our time together to embolden you, to strengthen that resolve in you, to disrupt on the spot and to make people uncomfortable. Give yourself permission to be uncomfortable and to make other people uncomfortable in your truth. And keep on breathing in and breathing out. And now the time has come to extinguish our chalice with these words from Elizabeth Sella Jones. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now Jackson will play us another beautiful piece by Eduardo Falú. And if you have any announcements, you can let me know in the chat box.
There you go.
Thank you. It's beautiful. I'm glad we got the technical bugs worked out so we could hear it much better by the end of this service. Well, this concludes the formal part of our service, and you're welcome and invited to stay, and we will divide into small groups where you can enjoy some fellowship and good company. So we invite you to stay, but we like to give a little break before that. So we'll take a minute break and there'll be a timer. So you'll see how much time is left until we go